The human colony of Venhurst thrived in quiet resilience, a flicker of light against the oppressive shadow of the Zerethi Dominion. Nestled in the arid plains of what was once North America, Venhurst's survival relied on ingenuity, grit, and a collective determination to endure. Its inhabitants carved out a modest existence, salvaging scraps of machinery and pieces of the old world to build a semblance of independence. For Kalen, a sharp-witted mechanic with a defiant streak, the colony's struggles were personal. Kalen's small workshop sat at the edge of the settlement, its walls lined with tools and parts scavenged from Dominion wreckage and human ingenuity alike. The grease-stained refuge was a hub for repairs, a place where drones, hoverloaders, and makeshift irrigation systems were given new life. But despite his skill, Kalen carried a simmering disdain for their overlords, the Zerethi. These tall, elegant beings with their shimmering sapphire skin and golden eyes had claimed Earth generations ago, their empire stretching across the stars. The Dominion's rule was absolute, its demands unrelenting. That morning began like any other, with Kalen elbow-deep in the rusted innards of a malfunctioning water purifier. His thoughts were interrupted by the low rumble of engines, a sound that sent a ripple of unease through the colony. He wiped his hands on his jumpsuit and stepped outside, joining a growing crowd in the main square. A sleek convoy of Zerethi vehicles rolled into the colony. Their metallic sheen caught the sun, gleaming with an almost predatory elegance. Soldiers emerged first, their armored forms exuding menace. Then came her, Princess Elvara. The stories didn't do her justice. She moved with the poise of someone accustomed to authority, her sapphire complexion shimmering like a living jewel. Her features were sharp, yet strikingly beautiful, her golden eyes sweeping over the humans as though she were appraising them. Flanked by guards, she wore an expression that was difficult to read, a mix of curiosity and aloofness. Kalen felt a jolt of irritation as the princess began speaking to the colony leaders. Her words were measured, her tone regal, but her presence alone was a reminder of their subjugation. He muttered under his breath, turning back toward his workshop. "Another royal visit," he said, his voice low. "Just what we needed." A small voice interrupted his musings. "Why's she here?" Kalen glanced down to see a boy no older than 10, peeking into his workshop. The child's wide eyes were filled with wonder, a stark contrast to the wariness etched into the faces of most adults. "Probably to remind us who's in charge," Kalen replied, his tone clipped. The boy tilted his head. "She doesn't look mean." Kalen let out a dry laugh. "She doesn't have to, her guards do that for her." The boy lingered for a moment before scampering off, leaving Kalen to his work. But his reprieve was short-lived. A shadow fell across the doorway, and Kalen looked up to find himself face-to-face with Princess Elvara. She stepped into the workshop, her presence instantly dominating the small space. "You're the mechanic?" she asked, her voice smooth and commanding. "That's what they tell me," Kalen replied, setting his tools aside. "What can I do for you, princess?" Her golden eyes roamed over the cluttered room, lingering on the half-disassembled machines. "I've heard humans are resourceful," she said. "Show me." The challenge in her tone ignited something in Kalen. He straightened, folding his arms across his chest. "What exactly are you looking for?" "Ingenuity," Elvara replied. "I want to see what your kind can do." Kalen raised an eyebrow, his irritation growing. He gestured to a hoverloader he'd been modifying. "This runs on half the power of Dominion models," he explained. "Built from scraps reinforced for durability. Want a demonstration?" "Proceed," she said, her expression unreadable. Kalen worked quickly, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. As he reassembled the machine, he narrated the modifications, explaining how each adjustment improved its performance. Despite his annoyance, he couldn't deny a certain pride in his work. When the hoverloader roared to life, its hum filling the workshop, Kalen allowed himself a small smile. "There you have it," he said. "Not bad for primitive tech, huh?" Elvara approached the machine, her fingers brushing its surface. She studied it with a focus that surprised him, as if she were trying to understand the human ingenuity. behind it. Impressive, she said at last. For a human. Kalen bristled at the backhanded compliment but kept his tone even. Glad it meets your standards, Princess. Her gaze shifted to him, her golden eyes narrowing slightly. You're different. Different how? You don't fear me, she said simply. Kalen met her gaze without flinching. Fear's a luxury I can't afford. Her lips twitched as though she found his defiance amusing. But before she could respond, one of her guards stepped forward, murmuring something in her ear. She nodded, her regal composure never faltering. Thank you, mechanic, she said as she turned to leave. Perhaps there's more to your kind than I thought. Kalen watched her go, his mind racing. He had no idea why she'd singled him out, or why she seemed genuinely intrigued by his work. But one thing was clear. Princess Elvara wasn't the untouchable figure the stories had painted her to be. She was something else entirely, and whether he liked it or not, Kalen had a feeling their paths were destined to cross again. The days following Princess Elvara's unexpected visit were anything but ordinary. Venhurst buzzed with speculation, the colonists whispering theories about why the Zerethi royal had chosen their humble settlement for her inspection. Kalen Drovich, however, was less interested in speculation and more focused on the tangible consequences of her presence. The Dominion's shadow loomed larger than ever, and her curiosity had painted an invisible target on his back. Kalen returned to his workshop, trying to lose himself in the rhythmic tinkering of machines. Yet every bolt he tightened and every wire he spliced reminded him of the golden eyes that had scrutinized his work with unnerving intensity. It wasn't just her presence that unsettled him. It was the look in her eyes, as though she had seen something in him he hadn't intended to reveal. The next time he saw her, it wasn't on his terms. It was a quiet evening, the kind where the desert winds whispered through Venhurst's dusty streets. Kalen was perched on a stool in his workshop, carefully calibrating the engine of a drone, when a sudden knock at the door interrupted his concentration. He glanced up, expecting one of the colony's residents seeking a quick fix. Instead, he found himself face to face with a pair of Dominion guards. Their armor gleamed under the fading sunlight, and their expressions were as stony as ever. Before Kalen could ask what they wanted, one of them stepped aside, revealing the unmistakable figure of Princess Elvara. She stepped inside without invitation, her gaze sweeping over the cluttered space before settling on him. The guards stationed themselves at the doorway, their presence a silent reminder of her authority. Princess, Kalen said, keeping his tone neutral. Didn't expect to see you again so soon. I find myself curious, Elvara replied, her voice calm but firm. Your work intrigued me. Kalen set his tools aside, leaning back against the workbench. You came all this way for a follow-up? I came because I see potential, she said, her golden eyes locking onto his. And because I believe you underestimate your own value. Kalen frowned, crossing his arms. I'm a mechanic. Not much to underestimate. You're resourceful, she countered. You've managed to accomplish things with limited means that my people would deem impossible. That is a rare quality. He couldn't help the small scoff that escaped. Rare enough for you to bring an entourage to my workshop? Elvara's lips curved into a faint smile, though it held little warmth. Rare enough to warrant attention. Tell me, Kalen, do you resent the Dominion? The question hung in the air like a blade poised to strike. Kalen's instinct screamed at him to tread carefully, but something about her gaze made it impossible to feign indifference. Resentment's not the word I'd use, he said slowly. I'm just tired of seeing my people struggle while your kind thrives. Her expression didn't falter, but he caught the flicker of something in her eyes. Curiosity, perhaps. Or was it something deeper? And yet, she said, stepping closer, you continue to build, to repair, to innovate. You've made your defiance into something productive. Defiance? Kalen echoed, raising an eyebrow. Fixing broken machinery isn't exactly a revolution. Not yet, she said, her tone enigmatic. But revolutions often begin with those who refuse to accept the status quo. Kalen stared at her, trying to decipher her intentions. She was a puzzle, this untouchable princess with her commanding presence and veiled words. But before he could probe further, one of the guards cleared his throat. "Princess," the guard said, his voice clipped. "It's time." Elvara nodded, her gaze lingering on Kalen for a moment longer. "Consider my words, mechanic," she said before turning to leave. As the door closed behind her, Kalen let out a long breath. He didn't know what game she was playing, but one thing was clear. Princess Elvara wasn't just passing through. She was watching, and she had plans. The following week brought an unusual flurry of activity to Venhurst. Dominion engineers arrived, installing advanced surveillance systems and new infrastructure. The colonists were wary, their unease growing with each passing day. Kalen tried to keep his head down, focusing on his work, but the tension in the air was impossible to ignore. It wasn't until a late-night visit from Elvara that he finally got some answers. She arrived alone this time, her sapphire skin glowing faintly in the dim light of his workshop. Kalen looked up from his work, startled by her unannounced presence. "Princess," he said, his voice tinged with exasperation, "you've got a habit of dropping in uninvited." Elvara didn't respond immediately. She stepped inside, her movements graceful yet deliberate. "You're the only one in this colony who speaks to me without fear," she said. "Why is that?" Kalen shrugged, wiping his hands on a rag. "Maybe I've got nothing to lose." "Or perhaps you see me differently," she said, her tone softer than before. "Not as an oppressor, but as an equal." The words caught him off guard. He set the rag aside, meeting her gaze. "Equal? You don't think highly of your people if you're comparing us." Elvara's expression didn't waver. "My people have their flaws, and so do yours. But I've come to realize that strength lies in more than technological superiority or political dominance. It lies in adaptability, resilience, traits your kind exemplify." Kalen frowned, unsure how to respond. He was used to Dominion officials who barked orders and demanded compliance. Elvara was something else entirely, a contradiction wrapped in elegance. "What are you really after?" He asked finally. "Why are you here?" Her gaze didn't waver. "I need someone I can trust." The admission stunned him. He stared at her, searching for any hint of deception, but found none. She was serious. "And you think that's me?" he asked incredulously. "You've got a whole empire at your back. Why would you trust a human?" "Because you have no reason to lie to me," she said simply. "And because you see the world as it is, not as the Dominion wants it to be." Kalen hesitated, the weight of her words sinking in. He didn't know what she wanted from him, but one thing was clear. Princess Elvara was walking a dangerous line, and if he wasn't careful, she'd drag him down with her. The rest of the night passed in tense conversation. Elvara spoke of her growing disillusionment with the Dominion, her frustration with its rigid hierarchy and blind ambition. Kalen listened, skeptical, yet intrigued. She was more than the untouchable figurehead he'd imagined. She was a woman caught between duty and doubt. By the time she left, the first hints of dawn were breaking over Venhurst. Kalen watched her disappear into the horizon, his mind racing with questions. He didn't know what game she was playing. But for the first time, he found himself wondering if there was more to the Dominion's princess than he'd ever dared to imagine. The colony's dusk bled into night, painting the sky with streaks of violet and crimson. In the low light of the communal hall, the air hummed with nervous anticipation. Whispers fluttered like restless shadows, weaving through the gathered group of colonists, wary men and women bound by hardship, uncertainty, and hope. Kalen stood at the periphery, his arms crossed, watching as faces flickered between determination and doubt. The sudden presence of Princess Elvara had stirred something far deeper than curiosity. It had cracked open old wounds, and questions long buried now begged answers. What was the Dominion truly after? Could the princess be an ally? Or was this another cruel game in a conflict they were doomed to lose? A young woman with sharp eyes and a fiery demeanor stepped forward from the crowd. Her name was Tyra Venn, a technician known for her quick wit and unwavering loyalty to the colony's survival. "We can't keep waiting," Tyra said, her voice rising with conviction. They tighten their grip every day. Surveillance cameras, patrols, resource rationing. The Dominion's chokehold is growing tighter. "We need to act." Murmurs of agreement rose like a swell. Kalen felt the weight of their gazes turning toward him. "It's not that simple," he said carefully. "Taking on the Dominion directly means war. And they have the technology, the ships, the weapons. We have grit and makeshift gear. That won't be enough." "Maybe not," Tyra countered, stepping closer. "But if we don't try, we're already dead." Her words struck a chord. For years, the colony had endured Dominion oppression quietly, bending under the yoke of a vast empire that considered them nothing more than insignificant cogs in its grand machinery. Now, with Elvara's visit and her cryptic admission of doubt in the Dominion's cause, the colonists' dormant spirit flickered back to life. Kalen exhaled, his mind racing. The princess had said she needed someone she could trust. Could he be that person? And if so, what price would he pay for stepping onto the battlefield of politics and rebellion? That night, Kalen's workshop was a hive of restless energy. He and Tyra pored over schematics, modifying drones and repurposing salvaged tech into weapons and communication devices. Every tool, every piece of scrap metal, held potential. The goal was simple: turn Venhurst's ragtag defenders into a force, capable of hitting the Dominion where it hurt. As the hours slipped by, a soft chime interrupted the relentless clatter of work. Kalen glanced up to see a secure message flicker across his holoscreen, an encrypted transmission from Princess Elvara herself. He hesitated before opening it, the weight of her words heavy even before they appeared. "Kalen," the message began, "I have information that could change everything. But it is dangerous to share openly. Meet me at the old outpost beyond the eastern ridge. Midnight. Trust no one." A chill ran down Kalen's spine. The old outpost was long abandoned, a relic of past conflicts rumored to be haunted by both ghosts and Dominion spies. Yet the princess's plea was impossible to ignore. He exchanged a glance with Tyra. "I'm going," he said. "We'll prepare," she replied, her eyes steady and resolute. Under the shroud of darkness, Kalen made his way to the outpost, the familiar crunch of dry soil underfoot mingling with the distant hum of Dominion patrols. The moon cast pale light over jagged rocks and forgotten ruins, setting the scene for a meeting cloaked in shadows. Princess Elvara waited near the crumbling control tower, her stance guarded but unmistakably resolute. The faint glow of her bioluminescent markings pulsed softly, a reminder that beneath her royal armor beat a heart conflicted. "You came," she said without preamble, eyes scanning their surroundings. "I did," Kalen replied, his voice low. "What's so urgent?" She pulled a small data chip from her sleeve, offering it with care. "This contains the Dominion's fleet movements and a plan for a major offensive against your colony. They intend to crush Venhurst within days." Kalen took the chip, his fingers tightening around it. "Why show me this? Why risk so much?" Elvara's eyes flickered with something that resembled regret. "Because I cannot stand by while my people destroy others in the name of power. The Dominion is fracturing. I want to help you fight back, to show them that strength doesn't come from domination but respect." Kalen's mind reeled. The revelation was as dangerous as it was hopeful. He understood that if anyone discovered her treason, she'd be marked for death. "We'll need allies," he said finally. "People who can move unseen, strike fast." Elvara nodded. "I can provide discreet support. Technology, intelligence, even a few loyalists within the Dominion who share my doubts." Kalen swallowed. The risk was immense, but so was the opportunity. "Then let's begin." Over the next days, the colony transformed. Where once there had been quiet resignation, now there surged a wave of determined resistance. Under Kalen's guidance, the colonists prepared to face the coming storm, fortified by Elvara's covert assistance. Yet with every small victory came growing danger. Dominion patrols intensified their scrutiny and spies lurked in the shadows. Trust became a precious commodity, and betrayal, a constant threat. One evening, while Kalen and Elvara reviewed battle plans in the privacy of his workshop, the unmistakable sound of breaking glass shattered the quiet. Before they could react, armed Dominion soldiers burst through the door. "Elvara," one barked, "you're under arrest for treason." The princess's eyes blazed with fierce determination. "You forget, I am no longer your obedient pawn." Kalen sprang into action, pulling a hidden lever. The workshop floor shifted, revealing a concealed tunnel. "Now," he urged. They dove into the darkness, the sound of soldiers' shouts fading behind them. The tunnel led beneath the colony's outskirts, a maze of forgotten passages perfect for escape. Emerging into the night air, Kalen and Elvara ran toward safety, the stakes higher than ever. The line between friend and foe had blurred, and the price of crossing it would soon be paid in full. As dawn broke, Venhurst braced for war. Kalen stood atop a ridge, surveying the colony below, a fragile beacon of defiance amid the vast desert. Elvara stood beside him, her expression somber yet resolute. "This is our line," he said quietly. "We hold it, or we fall." Her hand brushed against his arm, a silent promise in the cold morning light. Together, and with that they faced the coming storm. Two unlikely allies bound by a shared conviction that no empire, no matter how vast, could extinguish the flame of rebellion ignited by a human's unwavering will. The horizon burned with the orange glow of early morning as the first Dominion warships entered orbit over Venhurst. Their presence was an ominous reminder of the vast gulf in power between the colonists and the empire that sought to crush their defiance. Kalen stood shoulder to shoulder with Elvara atop the ridge, the wind tugging at their clothes as the distant hum of starship engines vibrated through the air. Below, the colony stirred, soldiers, technicians, and civilians alike moving with a tense purpose, preparing for the inevitable. "This isn't just an attack," Elvara murmured, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the fleet. "They want to make an example of Venhurst." Kalen swallowed hard, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. "We don't have their firepower, but we have something they don't: our knowledge of this terrain, and the will to fight for our home." Elvara's gaze met his, a flicker of warmth in the sea of tension. "Then let's make sure they regret coming here." The Dominion fleet's arrival was a masterclass in intimidation. Massive vessels bristling with weaponry, patrols enforcing a blockade, and dropships poised for invasion. But the colonists were ready, or as ready as they could be. Over weeks of secret training and relentless fortification, Kalen and Tyra had shaped the defenders into a resilient force. The repurposed drones buzzed overhead, outfitted with jamming devices to disrupt enemy communications. Sniper teams hid in rocky outcrops, ready to pick off approaching patrols. And deep beneath the colony, tunnels had been expanded to provide escape routes and staging grounds for guerrilla strikes. Elvara's insider knowledge proved invaluable. She supplied encrypted intelligence feeds that revealed enemy movements, allowing the colonists to anticipate and counter Dominion tactics. But the war was not just fought with weapons. It was a battle of wills. Propaganda broadcast by Dominion forces painted the colonists as rebels and terrorists, while Elvara's presence challenged that narrative. To her people, she was a traitor, but to Venhurst, she was a symbol of hope. The first clash came on a day heavy with dust and heat. Patrols, attempting to secure a critical outpost on the edge of the colony, were ambushed by swift, coordinated strikes. Using the terrain to their advantage, the colonists dismantled the Dominion squads with precision and tenacity. Kalen led one of the strike teams, darting through jagged rocks and ruins with an agility born of desperation. His pulse pounded as plasma bolts whizzed past, but he stayed focused, trusting in his team and the plan. As the firefight raged, Elvara directed reinforcements from the command center, her voice calm but commanding over the comm channels. "Hold the line. Don't let them breach the eastern ridge." The Dominion forces faltered, caught off guard by the unexpected resistance. The battle ended with heavy losses on both sides, but the colony's defenders emerged victorious. That night, the colony's communal hall buzzed with cautious celebration. Stories of bravery spread quickly, how a small team had destroyed an enemy supply convoy, or how a young sniper named Joss had saved a squad with a daring shot. Amid the revelry, Kalen found a moment of quiet with Elvara. She was seated near a holographic map, her fingers tracing enemy positions with an intensity that betrayed exhaustion. "You never cease to amaze me," Kalen said softly, sliding onto the bench beside her. Elvara smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. "You think it's me? It's the people here, their courage. They remind me what I've forgotten." Kalen nodded, sensing the vulnerability beneath her regal facade. "You crossed a line when you came here. No one will blame you if you want to turn back." She shook her head. "I'm beyond turning back. If I fall alongside you." Days blurred into nights as the war escalated. Dominion forces retaliated with heavier firepower, launching orbital bombardments that scorched the colony's outskirts and forced the inhabitants into shelters. Resources dwindled, and every victory was hard-won. Tyra and her engineering team worked tirelessly to repair damage and maintain the colony's defenses. Her sharp mind and relentless spirit kept the machines running even as exhaustion gnawed at her. During one tense raid, Tyra's quick thinking saved dozens of lives. A collapsing tunnel threatened to trap a squad, but she redirected a swarm of drones to shore up the walls just in time. Kalen witnessed her grit and innovation and felt a surge of respect. In the chaos of war, their bond deepened, forged in shared trials. But the Dominion's grip tightened. Elvara's own people grew restless, sending emissaries to remind her of her duty and threaten consequences if she persisted in betrayal. The cracks within the Dominion widened. Factions that favored harsh suppression clashed with those who sympathized with her cause. One night, Elvara received a clandestine visitor, a high-ranking defector named Saren, who pledged loyalty to her rebellion. He brought crucial intelligence, a plan to deploy a devastating weapon that could annihilate Venhurst in one strike. "This changes everything," Elvara said grimly after reading the data. "We have to stop it." Kalen's jaw clenched. "How?" Saren's eyes flickered with resolve. "There's a facility hidden on the moon's dark side, where the weapon's core is built. If we destroy it, we buy time." The mission was perilous. A small team would have to infiltrate the heavily guarded moon base and sabotage the weapon before it was deployed. Preparations began immediately. Volunteers were briefed, aware that few would return. Kalen, though reluctant to leave the colony's front line, knew the mission's importance. Elvara insisted on joining the team, her knowledge and status invaluable assets. Tyra loaded specialized gear, including stealth drones and hacking modules. Joss sharpened his sniper rifle, his calm demeanor belying the tension. The night of departure, the group gathered beneath a star-blanketed sky, faces illuminated by the flickering light of emergency flares. "Remember," Kalen said, voice steady, but heavy, "failure isn't an option. We're the last hope for Venhurst." Elvara's gaze met his, fierce and unyielding. "We will succeed, together." The stealth shuttle cut through space, silent against the backdrop of stars. As they neared the moon's dark side, the tension mounted, every moment a test of nerves. The base loomed ahead, a sprawling fortress carved into jagged rock. Sensors and patrols crisscrossed its perimeter, a deadly maze of technology and firepower. Elvara and Tyra worked to disable external defenses while Kalen and Joss positioned themselves for the assault. The air was thick with anticipation, every heartbeat echoing like thunder. Inside the base, the team encountered fierce resistance. Automated turrets sparked with laser fire, guards rushed from hidden chambers, and security systems screamed alarms. Elvara's training and insider knowledge guided them through corridors lined with cold steel and glowing control panels. Tyra's drones hacked doors and cameras, carving paths through the labyrinth. At the heart of the facility, the weapons core pulsed, a swirling mass of energy that promised destruction. Joss planted explosives as Kalen and Elvara guarded, against reinforcements. The countdown began, every second a dagger in their chests. With the detonators set, the team raced back through the base, pursued by enraged soldiers. The shuttle waited, engines humming in promise of escape. As the explosives detonated, a brilliant explosion rocked the moon, shaking the base to its core. Flames and debris cascaded outward, a fiery blossom against the black sky. The team burst into the shuttle, the blast narrowly missing them. As the shuttle lifted off, the facility crumbled, its deadly promise extinguished. Back on Venhurst, the news of their success ignited hope. The colony rallied, emboldened by the victory and Elvara's unwavering commitment. But the war was far from over. The Dominion would retaliate, and the stakes grew ever higher. Kalen and Elvara stood once more at the ridge, gazing at the colony, battered but unbroken. "We've crossed a line," Kalen said, "and the universe will never be the same." Elvara nodded. "Then let's make sure they know who's in charge." Their hands met, fingers entwining, a silent vow to face whatever came next, side by side. The air hung heavy with anticipation. Venhurst's battered but defiant colony braced itself for the Dominion's ultimate strike. A fleet unlike any seen before, an armada that dwarfed everything in the known sectors. Their mission? Crush the rebellion, erase the mark of defiance, and restore imperial order. Kalen stood on the command deck of the Vigilant, the human-built flagship now serving as the colony's command center. His eyes scanned the holographic star maps, countless vessels converging in brutal formation. The weight of leadership settled deep in his chest, but so did an unyielding fire. Elvara entered, regal and fierce, her presence a beacon amid the tension. Her violet eyes glowed softly with determination, the scars of war etched into her features but her spirit unbroken. "They've brought everything they have," she said, voice steady but laced with steel. "This is the last battle." Kalen nodded. "Then we give them hell." The colonists and their allies had spent every moment since the moon-base strike preparing. Engineers worked furiously to repair and upgrade defenses. Pilots trained in simulators that mimicked the fleet's patterns. Snipers and ground forces drilled relentlessly for the fight on the colony's surface. Amid the preparations, a quiet bond grew between Kalen and Elvara. Their relationship, forged in fire and battle, had become a rare sanctuary. They found strength in each other, a shared belief that no empire, no matter how vast, could extinguish the spark of freedom. The first wave of attack arrived like a thunderclap. Dominion dreadnoughts unleashed torrents of plasma and missiles, lighting up Venhurst's skies with deadly streaks of fire. Shields shimmered and groaned under the assault, but held. Kalen's voice echoed in the comms, calm and commanding. "Focus on the flanks. Protect the civilians and infrastructure at all costs." Elvara coordinated fighter sorties with precision, her tactical genius turning the tide again and again. Her voice was both sword and shield, steadying nerves, inspiring courage. The battle stretched across space and the colony's rugged surface. Ground skirmishes erupted as Dominion forces attempted landings. The colonists fought with desperate bravery, guerrilla tactics designed to offset the enemy's overwhelming numbers. In one harrowing firefight, Tyra and her team held a critical energy relay against a relentless Dominion squad. Despite being outnumbered, their ingenuity and grit turned the tide, buying precious hours for the colony. Joss's sniper shots rang out like thunderclaps, taking down key enemy commanders, disrupting coordinated strikes. Midway through the battle, a distress signal crackled over the comms. The Dominion's flagship, the Imperator, had deployed a devastating weapon, a singularity cannon capable of obliterating the entire colony in seconds. The command center erupted in chaos. "We have minutes before it charges," Kalen shouted. "Elvara, can you disable it?" Elvara's fingers flew over her console, sweat beading on her brow. "I need to get close, this is the only way." Without hesitation, Kalen volunteered to accompany her. The two boarded a small assault craft, weaving through the storm of enemy fire. The tension between them was electric, every second a gamble. As they breached the Imperator's defenses, Elvara's plan unfolded with precision. They infiltrated the weapons deck, dodging patrols and hacking security. With seconds to spare, Elvara interfaced with the cannon's control systems, initiating a cascade failure. Kalen held the door against incoming guards, every breath pounding in his ears. The cannon overloaded in a cataclysmic explosion, shaking the ship and sending shockwaves across space. Their escape was narrow but victorious. As the Imperator drifted, crippled and burning, the Dominion fleet began to waver. Kalen and Elvara returned to Venhurst amidst cheers and tears. The Dominion's forces withdrew, the Empire's grip fractured by this unprecedented resistance. Peace talks began, uncertain but hopeful. Venhurst's people looked to the future with wary optimism, their spirit indomitable. In the calm after the storm, Kalen and Elvara stood before the colony, hand in hand. "You crossed the line," Kalen said softly, "and showed them who's in charge." Elvara smiled, her heart full. "And you showed me the strength I never knew I had." Together, they watched the twin suns set, the horizon glowing with promise. A new dawn born from courage, defiance, and love.